Welcome to the ThunderCast, your Marshall Athletics podcast produced by the fans, for the fans, with your hosts, Russ Livingood and KD Hudnall. We're bringing you the thundering word on the thundering herd each and every week, so keep it right here. The ThunderCast is on the loose. Thanks for downloading another episode of the ThunderCast. You can follow us on Twitter at ThunderCast_pod. Also, the links to all of our social media pages are in the description to every episode. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok and over on Facebook. And of course, ThunderCast.online. It's about to, and already kind of has, seen a little bit of uptick in content. I'm going to go ahead and steal your line right here at the outset. If you're interested in contributing to ThunderCast.online, please drop us a DM on Twitter or Facebook or wherever you find us, and we'll try to get something rolling with you because, you know, we got a lot of fans out there of various sports, and if you want to look at things from a fan perspective, that's what we want. So might as well get your creative juices flowing, right?
We just picked up a new writer last week based on us mentioning it on this show. So cool. If you're one of those people, get up with me.
Yeah, well, we'll try to make something happen. But look, Russ, it's a new week, and we've got some big news floating around through the herd universe. And of course, what most folks have been waiting on is starting this week, and that is the 2024 series for position group breakdowns for the 2024 Marshall Thundering Herd football team. We're going to get into that in our featured story this week. So we've got a lot to get into. So let's get started with a quick word from our sponsors at Leasure Oliver PLLC.
If you've been hurt in a wreck, call the law firm of Leasure Oliver PLLC. Find them at 304carwreck.com.
I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't excited about doing this episode. I know there's some things that we're going to talk about that I don't really ever know what they are. So I've just been really excited about being able to start the position group breakdown series. Of course, today will be the coaching staff, just like always. There's been a lot of movement on the coaching staff. We're going to sum it all up. But first, get me started with at least 5 things every herd fan needs to know this week.
Yeah, so we're going to have 6 things every herd fan needs to know this week. As always, brought to you by Ignite Link, the Tri-State's premier IT management team. Number 1, Chris Grassi extended through 2031.
Boom, right? That is the biggest. It's what I tweeted. Biggest slam dunk decision that the Board of Governors and Herd Athletics has made in as long as I can remember. The man, I believe, should just be here until he doesn't want to coach anymore. I think he's earned it. Obviously, you bring a national championship home, you're going to have the luxury to write your own ticket for a little while. And it's not like Marshall has made this crazy offer and now he's just laying back and chilling. No, we're like competing year in and year out for that Sun Belt Conference title, which we know is one of the top 2. And in any given year, you could argue that it is the top soccer conference in the country. We're trying to make runs deep into that NCAA tournament. This is not a setback and just rely on what I did 4 years ago. Right now, granted, a national championship was 4 years ago. Who cares? It's a national championship. Marshall has stayed a competitor. SBC champions last year, right? This is just the best move.
Even though it was 4 seasons ago, because of COVID, keep in mind, not to you, but anyone listening, it is just over 3 years departed because it was in May of 2021 when that happened because of the way the nature of the season fell. But give props here. I'm getting this news from Luke Creasy. The annual base salary for Grassi was bumped up as well, $400,000, and that makes him second in all of Division I right now.
Yeah, Marshall is truly serious about men's soccer. And I think they're really getting really serious about women's soccer because we've talked about the hire of Coach Simoes and what we expect that program to begin to do this year under his leadership. It says that Marshall cares about this program and the fans care about this program. And of course, a lot of that has to do with winning. If you win, the fans will show up. And we've seen that in a couple of our sports in recent years, but nothing is competing eyeball to eyeball with men's soccer right now. It is the fastest growing, I believe. I don't want to call it most popular because I think football is always going to be the most popular here at Marshall. But it is, I think it's the fastest growing fan base within our fan base at Marshall.
Yeah, and we have definitely invested in that, and we are going to talk. Let's just go ahead. I'm going to flip flop these
Flip
things
them.
here. Yeah. 250 seats have been added to the vet for soccer. That was my number 3. That's my number 2 thing right now.
Yeah, that's the natural transition
Yeah.
needed. It
Yeah.
was needed. You know, Marshall's had sellouts, standing room only. It's like the demand was there. You had to strike while the iron is hot to continue to hopefully sell those tickets. I mean, hell, those might become season tickets at some point if they're not already. I don't know.
Oh,
But
they're going to be. There's no doubt about it.
perfect. See, so that's if the demand is there, you've got to take it. And folks are willing to buy those tickets, fill the venue, and make it one of the toughest places to play in all of the United States of America as far as men's soccer goes. Absolute, bona fide, perfect move for this program.
Yeah. 250 seats. I have not been able to go up there and see if they have already been put in place and stuff like that after seeing that news. I've just been busy with work and kids and family and all that goes on. But where I expect them to be is opposite of the grandstand right now on the other side. And whatever we do, whatever we add is just going to add to the atmosphere that we have there.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
It is already one of the greatest places. But you remember after the national title, they put in temporary bleachers, and then that became permanent. And they just continue to do whatever they can. The same that they're investing in the coaches and the program, they're investing in the venue that we play in. So great move.
And what's great about this is it benefits 2 programs.
2 programs.
Right?
Yeah.
Benefits 2 programs. And I'm hoping that those seats actually are across the way from the grandstand, because that gives premium seating, midfield seating, just across the way. So you've got a really good view, 250 seats. And if you're doing standing room only, there's no way 250 people are going to have a unobstructed view in that same stretch of field. So this really provides some atmosphere boost, as if the vet needed it. I mean, it gets crazy in there, but this is what they needed. They did it. And I'm glad it didn't take 5 years to get it done. You see the need and you get it done immediately. That's exactly the type of action that you hope to see when the need is there at Marshall. I'm glad this administration and the BOG and everybody involved just went ahead and made the move.
Our was number 2, now number 3 is Greg Bills has also been extended, and that is through 2029.
I also think that is a really important move for the future of herd baseball. I tweeted this in relation to Grassy. Now the fact that the Jack is open, the fact that these facilities are in place, you can actually take guys on recruiting tours in the locker room and the surrounding facilities, and you can wow them with what is there, and the opportunity to even talk about the Cold Cats and the ability to continue playing in the off season, so to speak. These are all the things that you have to have. So many programs across the country have that type of stuff, and we didn't have it, and now we have it. Coach Beals has some recruiting momentum with guys that are coming in out of the high school ranks. We talked about young Coop Henson last week and what he's accomplished down here in the state of Florida, being a first-team All-Stater. He's not the only one. There is a lot of young high school talent that has committed to Marshall, and that this staff is going to go out there and attack the hell out of the transfer portal to try to instantly plug some holes with some instant impact guys. Greg Beals is the right guy for the job right now. I firmly believe that with the name that he's made for himself in the region, like in Ohio, being an Ohio State coach for the longest time, and he's known. He's known, and that means something in this area. He's not trying to cold call a geographic region that he's completely unfamiliar with. This is like his honey hole, right? And hopefully Marshall's just going to continue to benefit from Coach Beals being here. I just think it's the right thing to do, man. You've got to give him enough time to truly say he had time to build a program, right? And we know with where we were, where we are now, and where we hope to go, at least 2029 is gives you the ability to say that we gave an ample amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah, you get a full cycle of people that have been in here with a stadium. So you have that off-season practice time in where they can go, during season practice time where they can go, having a locker room to where you're not changing out behind a car door or not in a car, not having to drive up 25 minutes away to get in a cage, or go over and share time with whoever's using the indoor practice facility. All that stuff is huge. But one thing, Coach Bills came in season one. He didn't have a full off season, nowhere near a full off season. He did have a full off season, obviously, for this second year, but he allowed all these guys, didn't give up on them, didn't say, hey, I'm sorry, I'm new, I'm going to replace everybody. Let everybody graduate. We had a huge class move on.
Yeah, what was it, like 17 players or something like that? Huge.
Yeah, and allowing them who had been here for 3 years, 4 years, 2 years, however long each one of them had been here, to have that inaugural season in the Jack. He just did everything. To quote a friend of ours that said this to me the other day, he did it the right way.
Yeah.
And now, we've got the Jack there. Remember, I have famously said every time that we've talked about the Jack, the night before the first game ever in the Jack was the first time the players got to go into the clubhouse.
Yep.
So the partially finished enough clubhouse. So now we're going to get to see what the Jack can do, like you said, as a recruiting tool, as an instrument to allow people to hone their craft and get better and stuff like that in the facilities that we have for them. I just think that this is a great long-term investment. It is a different angle of what we're talking about from Grassy, who has already won a national title and has already been here, with some success in the conference and stuff like that. But it's still the same vision of we need to invest long-term, and this is the guy to do it.
Yeah. And other things, right? Coach Beals aside, I know this thing is about him. I know that we have people that are listening to this right now, and they still go, who cares about a locker room? Who cares about that? Players care about that kind of stuff, right? That's why they want cool uniforms. That's why they want the facilities. They want to know that the program that they're being recruited to, that they want to commit to, is also reinvesting right back in them as a player so that they can be developed on the field, that there are things like the Buck that are investing in them academically. Like it's all part of the game, man. So folks got to get over that. Like it matters. These things matter. Like a cool locker room might not matter to you. It matters to an 18 to 23-year-old kid that's trying to come in and play some baseball. They want some nice, shiny things too. And now we're able to give them some of those things. They're in place when before they weren't,
Oh, I would tell the same people that say that to think about when they have to go look for a place to stay. If it's an apartment that they're going to rent, a house that they're going to rent, or an apartment or a condo or a house that they're going to buy. And you go, one over here has everything the way that you want it, or, most of the things that you want. And then over here you say, well, there's actually a refrigerator, but you have to go, to your neighbor's house and he's got it in his yard and you can go over there and everything. And yeah, there's no bathroom.
You actually have to share the bathroom with your neighbor.
There's no bathroom per se, but there's a community bathroom across the road, and here's a key that will get you in there. That's almost an appropriate analogy. Who is going to be happy with going there and saying,
nobody's
yeah, man, I'll take this. Yeah.
Right? Nobody's buying that.
Yeah. House. And it just to be able to go into a clubhouse, but I mean, that's one thing. How nice is the clubhouse? And, well, if it's got chairs, it can be a clubhouse. I get that. But they were changing in a freaking parking lot.
Yeah. This ain't Little League, man. Yeah. You don't get dressed at home and go to the game.
Yeah.
All right. This is Division I college baseball.
Yeah.
These are basic things.
Yeah. Where do you go for the training room in the middle of a game, and you don't have one?
Yeah. You're going to walk across the road over to the physical therapy offices and get some treatment. Like, not if you're jacked up and busted up, you're not going to.
Think about when they were on Route 2, though. Think about when they, that's what I'm saying is like, you've got to makeshift everything. Yeah. This is a facility now that is going to make a difference.
Absolutely, it is. And that's why I think this contract extension is so important. You
Yeah.
know, now there are really no excuses. It's now okay. Now we've given you all that you needed and most of what you wanted. Now let's build a program.
And
And
record
I'm
aside, go ahead. I'm sorry, I
no, I'm
cut
saying,
you
and
off.
I'm kind of here for it. That's it. That's all I was going to say.
And record aside, I saw a lot of growth in year 2 with Coach Bills because we went down to Southern Miss and we went down to Louisiana, 2 of the cream of the crop of the programs in the Sun Belt, which is an amazing Sun Belt, is an amazing baseball conference. We went down there and we impressed the hell out of their fans and those other teams, and we nearly came out of there with several big time wins.
Yeah, and the only thing I'm going to say to that is I don't disagree with that. But now I don't care about just going down there and impressing them. Right now we
Same.
have to win those games.
Yeah,
So it was the stepping stone. We did that.
yeah. You got to
Right.
crawl before
We
you can
showed
walk.
we can compete, but we competed in losses. Now we need to go down there and win some of those games. And I know you're, not sugarcoating the fact, and we're not playing for, good effort. You want to win the game. So now
Yeah,
that's where we are. Now it's
yeah.
about going and winning those games.
Absolutely. Number 4, we got Sasha Santamano is a recipient of the 2024 Kathy Ingles Legacy Coach Scholarship and is participating in the 2024 Women Coaches Academy class.
Yeah, I saw that. It might have been a day late or whatever, but I did see that, and I thought, hey, here we have been singing the praises of this women's basketball staff of what they're doing for Marshall and the recruiting trail, and keeping players around and building this what we hope to be a really competitive team. And here comes an outside the herd accolade for one of our assistant coaches, man. What a great opportunity. Like, congratulations, all of that kind of stuff, man. This is really, really cool. It shows that we've got some young coaches in the game that are up and comers, that are risers, right? So that's exactly what you want. I mean, we had the epitome of that last year with Coach Kim. Like, it doesn't get any more fast riser than what she did last year and then in the offseason. But it shows that even though we are transitioning to a new head coach, Coach Julie Folks, she's bringing in her staff. She's filling it with more up and comers and fast risers. And that has got to make you feel good about the future of Herd women's basketball.
Tell you the other thing too is we've had this with Coach Huff going to coaches clinics and academies and everything, but featured speakers for Megan Smith Line a couple of years ago, and Coach Zirkle's been at these things, and when you have these, it just opens up the pipelines because you've got high school coaches going to these things and stuff like that, and the networking you can have there, and someone just gets impressed with Santamano and says, I want my team to go to that team.
Right.
And that's how these things happen. It's just always a good idea. Everything that we talk about here on these things, the theme is just rising Marshall up. And it's some of these small things that build up just as much as one big thing,
Of course.
And this is one of those things that could easily be overlooked that I think is going to pay dividends a year, 2 years down the road.
Well, let's just dissect that, right? You're talking about going to these type of events, building a network. Let's say you get this one event leads to one player that gets recruited 2-3 years from now because you built a relationship with a coach from a high school, and they have a player that's still in elementary school or something like that. And by the time they get to high school, you have cultivated that relationship to where, okay, I want them to go where you're at. And Marshall, let's say they're still at Marshall, you get this top tier player that wasn't even in high school 5 years previous, and now they're a generational type talent. I know I'm going kind of to the extreme here, but that leads to a couple of championships, all because you went to a coaching event, 5 years previous. I know that sounds like that's kind of outlandish, but those things happen. That's kind of how you build those relationships. They got to start somewhere, and sometimes they happen at these events. So you're right. It's easy to just gloss over that, but it could lead to something or several somethings that are really impactful for Marshall.
Might end up with some really good up and comers that are going to be here as GAs or something like that. I mean, It doesn't have to be players. It doesn't have to be like you self-admitted, they're kind of the extreme, even though it's possible and it has happened.
Mm-hmm.
So are we saying that we're going to land one of the top players in the country because of this right here? No, but it has happened before, and exactly how you said it. So everything about this is just awesome. Every time I see these things, I like to include it on these lists because it matters.
Yeah, it does.
All right, number 5, Marshall Athletics has 4 programs with a perfect academic progress report, APR, and 6 programs finished first in the Sun Belt.
Jeez. Every time you talk about these things, I question why I didn't do better in college. I'm like,
I can tell you why I didn't.
I know. I don't want to talk about why I didn't. I know why.
How much time do we have?
Well, we got as much time as we want, but I don't want to get into, stuff that happened 20 some years ago. I don't. I saw the inside of other establishments down 4th Avenue more so than I did the Drinko Library, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, you went somewhere else to Drinko.
That's for sure. That's I haven't said it in a while, but this is the differentiator that we like to talk about academically. Perfect scores. What do you got to say about that? It's a freaking perfect score, right? And 6 of our programs that lead the way in the Sun Belt. I don't want to do this, but I could probably start plucking which programs those are, because some of them continuously are at that 4.0, 3.97, 3.89 GPA. So it's not completely surprising, but man, it's still awesome to hear.
Let me give you the stats here for everyone listening. 1,000 is perfect score here. We finished with an overall department rate of 987, and that's 3 points above the national average. So the national average is 984. We're above that. 4 of the programs, like I said, got that perfect score. You could probably name them. It is, man, I just had it and scrolled off. There it is. Women's cross country, women's golf, women's swimming and diving, and women's tennis.
I would have nailed at least 3 of those.
Yes. Yeah. And then, of course, we had 2 other. The women's swimming and diving program was the lone Sun Belt Conference program to finish with a perfect 1,000. That we had 4, I think, in season 1 of bringing swimming and diving back in the Sun Belt. In addition to those 4, women's soccer with a 998 and women's basketball with a 995 also led the way in the Sun Belt Conference. So 6 different programs out of our 14 led the Sun Belt Conference.
Shout out to our women's sports. I mean, all 6 of those women's programs. And don't tell me that you can't win championships and be highly active on the academic side, because women's basketball obviously will put that right to bed, as will cross country, because we have been performing at an extremely high level in women's cross country for the last couple of years. Like I said, man, I love everything about this, man. And even though these are the sports that, these Olympic type sports they'll never garner as much attention at Marshall as like football and men's basketball, and even men's soccer. But women's basketball captivated a lot of the fan base this year. And I think personally, we are individually responsible for a lot of fan base building within the track and field and cross country departments. I think because we talk about it so much, more people are giving a shit about those programs, and they should, along with all of them, really. But it just goes to show you that they're not mutually exclusive. You're not either just going to win or do well in the classroom. You can do both. And Marshall, especially some of Marshall's women's programs, are absolutely doing both.
Also important to note, as the article states, this is a 4-year average is how these come out. So men's track would not be included on this because they've only had 2 seasons since being reinstated as an athletic program here. The benchmark for the NCAA is 930, and every team drastically outpaced the 930. And I do want to say here, too, the lowest score that we had was baseball at 963, and a 930 is where they want you to be, and you're 33 points ahead of that and your lowest program, and that's how you get above the national average at 987 when the national average is 984 on a rolling 4 years.
It's awesome. Yeah. Absolutely awesome.
All right. Kind of similar in some Sunbelt overall performance. Number 6 and final thing here, Marshall finishes tied for 5th in the Sunbelt's Bubas Cup standings.
Yeah, we talked about that before, that this is the Sunbelt's kind of like athletic department wide championship, conference championship. It's all your sports together. And being 5th, tied for 5th isn't that bad. It's not great, obviously, but it just shows Marshall really needs to start hitting some more of those conference championship titles. Of course, we floated heavily with men's soccer and women's basketball this year. So, only capturing, I believe it was only 2. I don't think I missed one, but only 2 conference championships out of all of our sports this year. It's not bad, but I think historically Marshall just, this has nothing to do with the current regime, the current era, nothing. It's just historically Marshall has struggled to win conference championships across the board, and I don't think it's any coincidence that 2 of the programs that we have invested in the most in men's soccer and women's basketball turned around and won championships. And I'm not saying that, investing heavily in other programs is going to work, but I mean, at least in this sample size of data, it says that if you invest in the right people and you invest in coaches that know how to win and have a good system, that you can win in the Sun Belt. So I think it's time that, Marshall really needs, honest to God, I think the thing that will go the longest way, I'm not putting pressure on anybody, if Marshall wins a conference football championship, a lot of people are going to go, whew, because that's really all they care about, right? Mm-hmm. It would be nice to win a men's basketball conference championship. It would be nice to win a baseball one or a softball one. People would celebrate the hell out of that too. But I think the vast majority of fans would just kind of step back from the edge a little bit if a 2024 football conference championship came to Huntington. That's just the reality of it as I see it. But 5th is okay. We're tied with Louisiana. That's who we tied with. Texas State, I believe, won it for the second time in maybe 3 years. So, you're going up against some programs in some areas geographically that they have the ability to fund better than we do. I mean, just look at the disparity in athletic budgets between Old Dominion, James Madison, and everybody else in the Sun Belt. It's like nearly laughable how much larger that their budgets are. And I love the guys at the Monarchists. This is not a shade tossing thing, but it shows you can have a huge budget and also just not be sweeping everything. James Madison's done a pretty good job of winning a lot of championships. But I'm just using Old Dominion because they don't win a lot of championships in a lot of sports. They win them for sure. They're great in tennis and they're great in baseball and things like that. And they're pretty good in basketball too. So dollars don't always equate to success, but it sure as hell doesn't hurt. So,
well, you mentioned 2 conference championships, but the way these standings and points go, we actually had 4. But it's for those same 2 programs because regular season and the conference tournament both count for different points. So we did have 4, but it was women's basketball and men's soccer. Yeah. For anyone listening that does not remember how these work, if all 14 of your programs or all 14 schools in the Sun Belt compete in that sport, whoever finishes first gets 14 points. Whoever finishes last gets 1, and snake order there for the point totals. So coming in 5th, right there. I think with that and what we talked about before of how 6 of our 13 teams finished, since men's track couldn't be included, atop the Sun Belt, at least in a tie. I think that was a pretty good year. Again, could have been better, would have been better with some more conference championships, obviously, but we are doing good things since the move to the Sun Belt.
Yeah, it is. This is absolutely the best thing that's happened overall to Herd Athletics was the transition from Conference USA to the Sun Belt. Our competitiveness across the board, well, let's see, our competition level across the board has increased. I don't think anybody will argue that. Even our friends that are still at Conference USA schools, they might like the conference that they're in, and it might be competitive, but I don't think top to bottom that you can compare uh, competition levels with the Sun Belt. Like our top teams are just as strong as their top teams and vice versa. Our bottom teams are just as weak as their weakest teams, vice versa. But the middle pack, I think, is a notch above where the Conference USA's middle pack teams are. So moving to the Sun Belt was absolutely the best move that we've done. I think the fan base, I don't think anybody questions that. Like the drivability of the games and the programs that we're alongside now and all these things. There are some teams that we would like to have on our schedule that were in the Conference USA, I think, but by and large, people are way happier being in the Sun Belt. I would just like to see, a few more conference championships here. Some of those Olympic sports, just capturing lightning in a bottle and going on one hell of a run. And, of course, bringing a football championship would, like I said, would just be huge.
Yeah.
That's what puts people at ease. And it's been going on. Well, it'll be 10 years this year. 2014 was the last one. We went to a conference championship game. 2020, lost it at home, obviously, but it's just time. It's been too long. You and I are from the era where we went to a conference championship game every single year. And not only did we go to those, we won 5 out of 6 of those, and then it was just a kind of a started getting longer, and it's time again. So I just think it's time.
Speaking of it's time, that wraps up our this week 6 things every Herd fan needs to know this week. As always, brought to you by Nightlink.
Well, I'll tell you what a perfect transition talking about football conference championships to transition right into the featured story this week, which is the kicking off of the 2024 position group breakdown series for Herd football. And of course, we're going to start with the coaching staff, as we always do. There's been a hell of a lot of movement on the coaching staff this year. Quite a few departures, quite a few additions, and then some just general promotions and other changes within our staff. And we're going to talk about all of that. But, we like to use Phil Steele's rankings just for some context, and you and I are in agreement, not so much really with the coaches here, but as we move into actual player position groups, I think it's going to be a lot harder to put a whole lot of the same amount of faith that we've put into Phil's rankings in the past, because we've experienced guys transferring in, transferring out immediately. And, I just don't know how accurate you can be with that. But for the coaching staff, I think it's going to be pretty kind of, reliable.
Phil Steele's thing is available digitally, but I mean, it's hitting newsstands like as we speak or this week. And you think about it, transfers in, there's still a bunch of people in the portal that you can bring in. You could have 3-4 starters come in after this. You could. Not saying we're gonna, but you could.
Well, some teams will. That will happen for some teams. So let's kick it off here. Phil Steele sees this Herd coaching staff in 2024 as the 5th ranked staff in the Sun Belt. Not tied with anybody. The Herd is straight up 5th. Now, I will say this. From a team standpoint, I don't know if this puts some pressure. It doesn't, because it's just a ranking. But Phil sees this 2024 Herd as the number 2 team in the SBC East, finishing 2nd. That surprised me, honestly, with all of the change and the wholesale changes on offense and some of the departures on defense and special teams like that. That surprised me. I thought Marshall might be more middle of the pack, but no, he sees the Herd as the number 2 in the SBC East. And of course, I'm not going to get angry at that. But today we're focusing on the coaching staff, Russ. And before we get into all the movement, I'm just going to run down what the full staff looks like right now. This is not the support staff. This is not anybody else. This is just our on-field coaches and position group or position coaches. Of course, Charles Huff, entering year 4, is our head coach. Offensive coordinator Seth Dagey, entering year 1. Defensive coordinator Jason Seymour, who will also take on the role as linebackers coach year 2. Special teams coach Jonathan Gallant, year 3. Running backs coach Telly Lockett is in year 4. Entering new offensive line coach Cody Creel, year 1. Wide receivers coach Aaron Dobson, all-timer, heard great. Will be in year 2 with an asterisk there. I'll get to that in a minute. Tight end coach Josh Miller, year 1. Defensive line coach Ralph Street, year 4. Year 1, co-defensive coordinator and cornerbacks coach Henry Baker. And then entering year 2 with an asterisk is safeties coach Bob Shoop. Some bullet points for that, Russ. 4 first-year coaches at Marshall. Then add on another 2 in their first year as a position coach at Marshall. But, of course, that's the asterisk. Aaron Dobson was an offensive analyst last year, so is actually in year 2 with the Herd. And Bob Shoop was a defensive analyst with the Herd last year. That's why he's in year 2. One more note about Coach Bob Shoop. He's a 40-year coaching veteran, guys. 40-year coaching veteran. He's been a defensive coordinator at several high-profile Power 5 schools throughout his career, mostly in the late 2000s through the 2010s era. He was DC at Penn State, Mississippi State, and Tennessee. This guy has forgotten more about defense than most guys will ever learn about defense. So having him on staff at a safeties position, the mind that's going to be in those meetings is kind of off the charts. And now just 2 coaches remain from Charles Huff's inaugural staff, and that is, of course, running backs coach Telly Lockett and defensive line coach and also all-time Herd Mac era great Ralph Street. Russ, before we get into movements, do you have any general comments on the coaching staff as a whole?
Yeah, one thing there, you said not going to put support staff in there, but we are going to talk to about Ben Ashford.
Of course.
He's technically support staff because he's not an on-field position coach, but we will talk about him and his impact and everything. Overall, I think that we did a tremendous job filling the departures, and we're going to talk about each one of these individually, but you already talked about Bob Shoop and what he brings in. He was an analyst with us, now taking over position. Totally different than someone cutting their teeth as an analyst and then moving up to this. So when we're talking about all this, it'll fall into place. You and I are probably going to be a little bit on the same page with that. You already said it. Bob Shoop has forgotten more about defense than someone just coming in as an analyst and getting bumped up, you know.
Yeah. So actually what you're talking about is someone cutting their teeth as an analyst and then becoming a coach. That's exactly what also happened here on the offensive side. Aaron Dobson was his first offensive analyst role last year with the Herd, and now he's a wide receivers coach. And look, I've got full faith that Aaron Dobson knows a thing or two about playing wide receiver and running routes and leverages and making spectacular catches and, you know, all of those type of things. But we have that polar opposite right there on our own staff. So let's talk about departures. There were a lot of departures from this 2023 Herd football staff. And it's a pretty decent running theme, I think, based on what we know, what we want to do this year, what's already out there. But, of course, it leads the way with the biggest departure, of course, offensive coordinator Clint Trickett has departed from the 2023 Herd football staff. He's now at Georgia Southern, so we're going to be facing Clint at some point this season. Co-defensive coordinator and cornerbacks coach Chevis Jackson departed and is now down in Miami, Florida at the U with former defensive coordinator. I just happened to draw a blank just now. Anyway, offensive line coach Bill Legg departed off of the staff. He is now an offensive analyst at Minnesota. Wide receivers coach Jovan Bonight departed. I could not find if he is coaching anywhere right now, maybe taking a year off. Linebackers coach Shannon Morrison, another Herd great, also departed from the 2023 Herd football staff. I could not find if Shannon has another gig right now. He too may be taking a year off just to decompress from the grind of football life. And then tight ends coach Derek Shea departed from the Herd football staff, and he's now offensive quality control at the University of Kentucky. Russ, any notes from you from departures?
No, I have seen Bo Knight recently at some NFL teams and stuff like that. I think I saw him down at the Dolphins and stuff. So I don't know if he is like officially with a team or something, but we saw Coach Legg move on to a big program like Minnesota, and yeah, it's as a analyst or whatever, but our coaches by and large that left here have, some fans are going to find this hard to believe, found coaching jobs elsewhere.
Yeah.
Sometimes you say he'll never coach again because you're upset with how a season win or a game win or something like that. But these coaches move on, and a lot of times you see coaches that don't do X here and then they move on and do much greater there. I think, everybody has been in that position at some point. You never just start with a team and end with that team and everything. Even the greats have started elsewhere and moved on. So we appreciate, I'm speaking for you, the time that we had these coaches here and, the brief interactions that we had with them and everything. But everybody is a son of Marshall that played here. I view the same as coaches. So I'm hoping these guys have success, except for when they play us, same as we do for players and everything. So
Yeah.
I doubt they're listening, but I do hope that they have good careers wherever they go.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, but that's the cutthroat
That's
business
business. It's
that is
business.
college athletics. And just a house cleaning note, the name came back into my mind. Lance Guidry, former defensive coordinator down at the U, is where
Yeah.
Chavis Jackson rejoined. There are some guys that I'm talking about Shannon Morrison particularly because he's so heard through and through, man.
Right.
And that's a tough situation. And we talked about him last year. This is like his third stint with Marshall, so that means that he has also departed from Marshall two other times previously. So now he's been a coach three times and has departed three times. And that, I believe, to me, would be the toughest situation. But I don't think anything is going to happen that will make his love for the herd waver, because he played here, man. It's like, dude, it's a different level than just a coach. Like, he's not just a coach. He's an all-time great. And any interactions I've ever had personally with any of our departed coaches were positive. I mean, they were. It's hard for a fan to, because I'm in this boat too, man. I'm just a fan. It's hard sometimes for me to look at these guys as like they're just guys like I am, man. They just happen to coach football for a career, whereas I do something else for a career.
Yeah.
But they've just been really just cool dudes, So I don't have any ill will against them at all. I do wish them well, but on that same note, I hope that every coach that we brought in here outpaces what the guys did that left. That's kind of why you brought them in and made the change. You're not hoping to make a change and do worse. You're hoping to make a change to find the answers to the questions that ultimately hoist the championship trophy in Huntington, West Virginia. So let's talk about the additions to the herd staff. There are 4 of them. New offensive coordinator Seth Dagey comes in from Purdue, where he was the tight ends coach in 2023. This will be the first opportunity for Coach Dagey to be a offensive coordinator. He played his quarterbacking or his playing days. He was quarterback at Texas Tech in the late 2000s and the early 2010s. So when you start talking about a whatever you want to call it, air raid offense, modified air raid offense, whatever the term is you've heard as it relates to Marshall, kind of makes sense that you go after a guy who is familiar with that kind of offense, right? Texas Tech in the late 2000s, early 2010s, that says Mike Leach to me, and I'm not sure there was anybody better at running a air raid offense than Mike Leach. So there's some experience from a playing side there. Now there's experience from a coaching side there, and he's been given the keys to the car to see what they can do in Huntington to put some more points on the board and bring some more excitement inside Joan C. Edwards Stadium on Saturdays. Current or new co-defensive coordinator and cornerbacks coach Henry Baker comes to Marshall. after coaching the last 4 years at Maryland, where he also coached corners. New offensive line coach Cody Creel is an interesting hire. Comes to the herd most recently from the XFL, where he was tight ends coach for the DC Defenders. But before that, he was offensive coordinator at Incarnate Word and has some experience in that air raid-ish type offense.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also a head coach at Navarro Junior College. So he's kind of done it all at a bunch of different levels and worn a bunch of different hats. The last of the newcomers to the herd coaching staff is new tight ends coach Josh Miller. Last season, he served as offensive analyst at Purdue with new offensive coordinator Seth Dagey. So an interesting dynamic there. Some built-in chemistry. You've got yourself a seasoned cornerbacks coach and a new offensive line coach that has absolutely done just about everything that you can do on the offensive side of the ball. Russ, what do you got for me as it relates to these additions to the staff?
Well, first thing I want to talk about is Cody Creel, and he had a former player's dad came from the Houston area up here for our spring game, was at our tailgate talking to us and everything, came over. By the way, signed up to be a Big Green member, made a donation and everything. He came up here all the way for that, just in support during a spring game of Cody Creel when his son has not played for him for several years. Right. That lends to me that this guy builds relationships and is respected. I have heard in a bunch of different coaching circles that this is one of those hires that people are going to say, wow, this guy's a future, he's going to be a big guy on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
And I'm here for it, man. Let's give him that shot. Let's give Bob Shoop yet another position to add to his lineage of everything that he's done. You talked about defensive coordinator at some big schools, and all these other big schools he was at where he handled the defensive backfield, or it was safeties only or cornerbacks or whatever. And then Henry Baker coming down, he's done just about everything at Maryland and such, and had all the accolades. All these guys and the players underneath them that have gone on to the NFL. It's just an exciting time, I think, to have these particular coaches brought in. And I am excited for the air raid, but I need everyone to remember air raid does not equal the run and shoot or the fun and gun. It's not throwing 4 verticals on Madden 18 times a game. It's more intermediate passes, quick, just totally different than the zone read that we had been doing or the RPO that we had been doing over the last 2 coaching staffs.
Yeah, I think what you need to keep in mind when you talk about a modified air raid or an air raid is the percentage of run to pass, the ratio of run to pass. It's not so much that they're all downfield, long, low percentage throws. It's just, you might be a 70-30, but those 70% pass plays, I mean, a bunch of those might only go 3-4 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. So it's kind of, I don't know. I liken it a little bit to the West Coast offense, because the West Coast replaced run plays with short passing plays. So it's not the same thing, but the thought process kind of is the same a little bit in that capacity. But I'll tell you, I'm super excited about bringing Cody Creel in. I think that's a slam dunk hire. I do. Anytime you can get a former offensive coordinator that has experience in this style-ish of offense and bring him in as a position coach that's just another mind in the room when it comes to game planning. And let's be honest, our guys are going to have to execute the plays, but we're going to have to put out some stellar game plans week in and week out to put our guys in a position to try to execute and win football games. And the more minds that you have in those rooms, now you're talking about Dagey and Miller, who worked alongside each other at Purdue last year, who, by the way, the offensive coordinator at Purdue is Graham Harrell, another Texas Tech quarterback, one of the most productive quarterbacks at Texas Tech ever, and one of the most productive from a passing standpoint in the NCAA history ever. So you could see what they were trying to do, or are about to try to do,
Mm-hmm.
in West Lafayette. So we get Miller and Daggy to come into Huntington and try to do that. You bring in Cody Krill, who's got experience um, doing that sort of thing, and then Henry Baker, who is just going to benefit from having all those young DBs that cut their teeth last year. Yeah, we had some portal hits, and we'll talk about those when we talk about DBs. But I don't think you're seeing a notch down higher at any one of these four spots. I
Right.
don't. We don't know what Seth Dagy's going to look like, and
Mm-hmm.
especially in relation to what Clint Trickett was able to do. We don't know. That's the great question mark, right? If
Yeah.
we knew that, well, hell, I'd bet on some games, but I don't know what that's going to look like. But I don't think from the surface of what we're trying to do versus the history of these guys that we have notched down. I think
Mm-hmm.
we have notched up, honestly. With that being said, who do you think? I'm just going to toss this one out there. Who do you think of these four guys is going to have, the most pressure put on them? This is really a slam dunk question. Who do you think's got the most pressure to succeed?
Oh, man, I mean, I thought you were asking a different question until in the middle of the question, I heard what you were actually asking, so it flip flopped my answer.
Yeah.
It's Daggy, as the offensive coordinator. We had offensive problems last year. Otherwise, we would have had a much better record.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to come in here, even if it were the same exact offense that he was bringing in here, there would be insurmountable pressure based on everything that the fans are clamoring for. Is, brother, you got to put up points.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at. What I thought you were going to ask when you started it, I was going to say Cody Creel, because I think that the offensive line is so key to your running game and your passing game that
Mm-hmm.
he was going to have the chance, not as a pressure situation. When you said pressure, it changed my thing. I thought he was going to have the chance to have the biggest impact, because if you have a major offensive line that's a cohesive unit and everything, and you can pick up 3 to 4 yards every time you run, and you can pick up 5 to 7 every time you throw on average, and you're moving the ball down the field and stuff like that, you got a chance to score some points.
Yeah.
A good offensive line takes you everywhere, and that is the backbone of your offense. As much as the quarterback is the number one on the field, he's only as good as his protection allows.
Yeah. And we've seen that at times. There's been no time to pass, and there's just nothing you can do. Even if you share the backfield with someone as great as Rasheen Ali,
Mm-hmm.
there's only so much that great player can do if the blocking is not there.
Right.
And the greats will make something happen more
Mm-hmm.
times than not. But if the blocking is there, think about it from a couple of years ago. Some of those gaping holes that Kalen Laburn had the luxury of running through, and what that meant to Herd's success. So, yes,
2014, when Rockhead was running through, I mean, I could drive my truck through those holes.
You're also talking about arguably the greatest offensive line that Marshall has seen in the FBS era, right? That 2014 line was crazy good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think Cody Krill has the opportunity to have the biggest immediate impact. Who's got the most pressure? I too think it is Seth Daggy, because you're the marquee. You're one of the top 3 marquee coaches on the staff. It's DC, OC, and HC. Come on, everybody knows that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some promotions and some changes that went on within the staff. I mentioned 2 of them earlier. Aaron Dobson promoted from offensive analyst to wide receivers coach, and Bob Shute promoted from defensive analyst to safeties coach. The third change I also mentioned slightly just a bit ago is that defensive coordinator Jason Seymour has taken over linebackers coaching duties as well. So Marshall did not replace the staff with a full-time linebackers coach. I'm not sure that there's anything that we need to dissect about that, but if you want to, feel free.
Yeah. So Aaron Dobson played in the NFL. Bob Shute, we've talked about him already a couple times in this segment. To me, coach's coach. It doesn't matter if they were an analyst, whatever the title was last year. It will be a little bit of a learning curve for Dobson as a coach for the first time. But as you mentioned earlier, he knows a little bit about wide receiver routes and things like that. So again, man, I'm very bullish. I think that you're right. We have replaced and notched up.
Yeah. Now, the other one that I got to mention again is, of course, linebackers will now be coached by defensive coordinator Jason Seymour. If you remember, Coach Seymour was linebackers coach at Georgia Tech before he came over to be our defensive coordinator. So it's a natural fit. All of these things just kind of make sense. And, you know, so I don't really see this as shuffling on the staff. I mean, yes, it's technically shuffling, but these are natural fits with the exception of safeties. Bob Shoop. I mean, that dude could be anything. He could be any defensive coach, honestly. So to have a mind like that just in this, like locked in at safeties, great, because I think he's going to be able to contribute to so much more. He's going to be able to provide knowledge at the linebacking level, at the defensive line level, from a wholesale perspective. And it should be noted that I mentioned all those defensive coordinator jobs that Coach Shoop had. He was also safeties coach at Michigan in 2019. So this is not just like a let's find a place for the coach. No, he's done this before at one of the premier programs in the country at the University of Michigan. So,
yes, and I think that's why we have what we have. Is Seymour has coached at a high level linebackers. Shoop has been focused on safeties, you know, at most of his stops and stuff like that. So you're putting the coaches where their specialty is. You know, a title's a title. Henry Baker has co-defensive coordinator as his title. You know, so who cares about titles? We care about coaching up the players and the performance on the field.
That's what I care about.
So, you know, it's putting them at their best place. You only have so many slots that the NCAA allows before making them be a support staff member. So I think that it's a natural fit to have Seymour do the linebackers because of his history at the linebacker coach position.
Yeah. Now, interestingly, I just noticed this, and I went back and I don't know if you can tell or not, but I'm scrolling on the Herd Zone coaching staff page real quick. What is missing from this coaching staff is no one is designated as a quarterbacks coach. Now, it makes sense that offensive coordinator Sethegi would also be working very, very closely with the quarterbacks, but it's just interesting to me that he's not listed as offensive coordinator / quarterbacks coach.
Yeah, and we have had many times over the years where we did not have a designated quarterbacks coach.
It's been a long time.
And I'm thinking it was while Grant Wells was here, we didn't have somebody that was designated. There were several years, but we need a quarterbacks coach, in my opinion.
No, we're saying the same thing. It's been a long time since we've had a designated quarterbacks coach.
I thought we had that last year with Clint.
Yeah, but he was OC.
Yeah,
like, I'm talking about just a quarterback coach.
Okay. I'm talking about there's been many years that we have not had anybody with a / quarterback.
Oh, no. I meant an exclusive quarterback position coach.
No, I don't think we've had that. And
I think the last time we had one, it was when Tony Peterson was here in the Cato era, I believe. And, well, you saw that's such an unfair comparison, but you saw how Cato performed. But it's just one of those things, you know.
Well, I mean, there's only so many spots and stuff like that. Yeah, it would be great to have a guy, but pretty much you're going to have a / offensive coordinator or co-offensive coordinator.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
But that is the staff in a nutshell, with the exception of the man at the top.
Well, let's talk about, before we go to Coach Huff, let's talk about BA, Ben Ashford.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Of course, Director of Sports Performance. Let me get the title right. It's not Strength and Conditioning Coach anymore, folks. It is Assistant Athletic Director for Sports Performance. And that is, of course, BA, Ben Ashford, the guy you do not want to run into when he's angry. I absolutely dig that dude's vibe. He is everything that you love about what a football coach should be. Yeah. And he's absolutely an important factor of this Herd football coaching staff, because in the spring and the summer, that's who spends the most time with our team. You know, it's the I'm going to call it the strength and conditioning coach, but it's BA. He's the one that is spending the lion's share of time around our guys, getting them prepared. He's entering year 4, also part of Huff's inaugural staff. But man, what a guy! I love everything that dude is about. So intense, but intense in the right way. Even when it trickles down to being part of the intro videos and the hype videos, man, he just fits the freaking mold. I love what BA does with our guys. Absolutely.
Going into the fourth quarter, we play all that, and you can tell by the players on the sidelines how hyped they are going into that fourth quarter. We have the fourth quarter program. It's just everything is designed for their hard work, and everything is to finish the game, be stronger and faster at the end of the game than your opponent. And BA does a great job. All kinds of different coaches, players, parents that we've talked to, they always mention BA.
You know what? I would love to talk to that guy. I would love to have him as part of an episode here. I think that would be such an awesome discussion.
We just sit around and eat raw meat and
just chewing on nails, just giving it hell, But I think that would be such an interesting mind to pick, to get some perspective on a lot of the things that fans just do not see.
Yeah.
And they just don't have a clue about, I think that would be really awesome. I would love to talk to you. I think he's just an integral part of everything. Coaches can coach, and we can game plan, and we can do everything on paper that we need to do. And we can practice those plays to the point to where they are, you could run them in your sleep perfectly. But if you're not in the best physical shape to execute that, if you're not a step faster than the guy across from you, if you're not stronger than the guy across from you, or can at least make up for that lack of strength or that strength disparity with leverages and technique, I'm not sure that we're prepared to win games. And nobody gets them prepared to win games like BA and his staff. They tell you win the game throughout the week. Right? You don't win the game on Saturday. You win the game throughout the week with your preparation, and then your off-season preparation and all that, the way you're eating and everything. And we've heard our players say that, we've got to eat the right food. We've got to make sure we're getting them ample amount of rest. We got to make sure we're going to treatment and all that kind of stuff, so that when Saturday rolls around, all you have to do is just go out there and have a little fun. BA, there's nothing you can say to me to short sell what BA means to this program. That you'll never be able to do it. You'll never be able to do it.
Final word for me on him is think about last year when Coach Huff was talking about off-season progress of players, and he talked about body transformations. And it wasn't just all about putting on weight or losing weight. It was like, person X lost this many pounds he lost this many pounds, but he's bigger and stronger. He's gaining muscle and losing that much more. Just a total body transformation.
Yeah. It's adding lean muscle weight or lean body mass and trimming
fat.
down on percent fat. Yeah.
And it's just such an important often overlooked position.
Of course, but it's not just about changing those bodies and getting stronger, but also this goes largely into injury prevention and being able to take it across the course of an entire season. You have to be in good shape to sustain the abuse of a season. And that's just not day-to-day practice, in which will beat the hell out of you anyway. But you've got to go and be able to do that for months on end and then go out and be able to perform. And we saw the difference just last season when our players were tasked with playing injured and when they were relatively healthy. We saw that from a number of guys. Some of them aren't on the roster anymore, but we've seen that from a number of guys, how different of a player they were when they were afforded the luxury of playing healthy versus having to do it dinged up, and more than dinged up, actually playing injured. So let's round it all out with the head ball coach, Charles Huff, entering year 4, overall record 22-17, 2-1 in bowl games. The Herd, Peaked in, let's see, Huff's second season. So first year, 7-6, 5-3, tied for second in the East Division in the Sun Belt. Second season, 9-4, 5-3 in the Sun Belt, third in the Sun Belt East, and then last season dropped to 6-7, just 3-5 in the Sun Belt Conference, tied for fifth in the Sun Belt East Division. There have been a lot of great things that Charles Huff has done at Marshall. There have been a lot of things within the program that have been done under his leadership, and not all of it is on the field. There have been some great moments. There have been
Yeah.
some all-time great players that have come through the program during the Charles Huff era. But I think about things like rekindling the relationships with our herd greats and some of the things like that really begin to, I guess, strengthen and bolster and galvanize the fabric of Marshall's football program. But when it all boils down to it, man, most fans, they don't care about that stuff.
They don't.
They care about the wins
and
and the
losses.
losses. That's what it's all about. You win games, you're either gonna get hired away or you're gonna win some championships or whatever. You don't win games, you're gonna be we'll be looking for a new coach and all that kind of stuff. Whether you think that's fair or unfair, that's just the business. It's about winning. And that goes all the way back to the line from We Are Marshall. One day we'll be just like every other program where winning is everything and nothing else matters. And that's where we are as a program. We will always honor our legacies, right? But Saturday to Saturday, it's about winning the game, right? So talk to me about Coach Charles Huff. Talk to me about how you're feeling about the decisions of, revamping completely the offensive scheme, the changes, and anything that you've got cocked and loaded. Let's talk about it.
Well, I'm a Huff fan as far as what he's done with the program and everything. Being very transparent and community minded. It's one of the things about Doc. He seemed to not be around when it wasn't, game time and things like that. Coach Huff bringing back the former players and that olive branch, I think, is huge. And it's one of those things that we can build off of for decades here. And so I'll always love that aspect. I am also a fan of how he has brought in players that are not constantly in the news for all the wrong reasons. I feel like he is mentoring men to become better men, mentoring kids to become men. And I like that as well. Results on the field are ultimately going to be what a coach gets hired or fired for. And it's a contract year per se for him. This is the last year of his contract. So right, wrong, or indifferent, I feel like he's going to have to be at a certain level on the field record-wise to be able to continue being the coach here. All the off-field things aside, like you said, wins and losses is what it's going to boil down to.
That's just the name of the game. We said the same. We said the same thing 4 years ago with Doc Holliday.
Yeah,
it's time. Like that's what they were saying with Doc. Anything short of a conference championship, and we're gonna, probably make a change. And Doc Holliday went to the conference championship game, lost it, and we still made a change. And some folks were like, "Wow, I'm kind of surprised," But when we again come from an era where the slogan for herd football was "We play for championships," and that's what we did. Damn it, annually we played for championships. And now you're bringing around guys that were from those eras again, and they're like, "Hey, man, like, what's up?" I'm not trying to speak for them, but you're just saying, like, "Hey, man, we used to go to the conference championship every year." Like, I get it; it's a different game, transfer portal and all that kind of. It's different. It's a different animal, but still. And this does not exclusively fall on Coach Huff, right? He's only been here for 4 years. Marshall hasn't been to a conference championship in 4 years, going on 5, and we haven't won one in a decade, right? So something's got to give. I I've heard numerous outlets saying that this is going to be Coach Huff's most talented team from top to bottom. And I'm not saying it's not. I'm not trying to be a hater, but we've lost some big time players, right? And we've got a lot of guys that will be asked to be that marquee player for the first time, right? And I'm not tossing shade at anybody. I hope they go out and obviously dominate. But, you're losing guys like Owen Porter, and Micah Abraham, and Rasheen Ali, and Eli Neal. And these were guys that performed for multiple years for Marshall. And now we're going to be asking guys to step up in a big way for the first time. That there are guys that we think are going to step up, guys like Mike Green, right?
Yeah.
For example, we think there will be a lot of younger DBs or some of those DBs. Josh Moten, we think, will be a big part in the secondary. But your offensive line is going to be reworked. Logan Osborne is basically the lone starter from last year that is returning.
Going to have a new quarterback.
You're going to have a new quarterback.
Yeah.
You have to replace Rasheen Ali. I mean, I'm not saying that they're wrong, but I'm just saying, like, man, it's a lot to replace.
It is.
And on top of that, you're going to try to incorporate an air raid system in one off season. It's a lot. Now, like you said, I'm going to say this too. I'm a Coach Huff fan. I like him as a guy. I like what he's meant to our program. I love that he's been involved in the Huntington community, that he realizes how big that his program how much it means to the city of Huntington in particular, but the surrounding areas too. That is a huge difference between he and Doc Holliday. Doc just felt like he wanted to coach football. Didn't really care about, anything. I want to coach football. And that's fine. There's a place for that too. I hope Huff has the answers this year, and not just for me as a fan and not just for the fans of Herd Football, but for him too. I think we've been putting in this work, and he's been recruiting, and he's been, game planning and hiring coaches and trying to revamp the staff and done that for a number of years. And he's had to replace big time pieces that have hit the portal, and he's had to replace, successful coaches that have gone on. And that's the nature of the game. He's not, it's not just mutually or exclusively his problem. Every team across the country has to do that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'd like for him to be able to get that 10-win total. Like for him to be able to get that SBC conference championship game appearance, SBC championship victory. Will it happen? I don't know. Sure as hell hope it does. It makes the fall a hell of a lot more fun when the Herd's winning.
Absolutely.
It absolutely does.
I think that he has done a great job navigating this new era of the transfer portal and all that, and of course the haves versus the have-nots. Even with our coaches, you see, have a successful couple of years, and Lance Guidry's gone to former powerhouse and still highly thought of Miami. We've got coaches moving on, players moving on. It's just a different world. What he has not done is sit and said, oh, well, he's went out and actively recruited and is constantly recruiting. In fact, just came across right now, the Herd just got bigger.
Oh, okay. I was wondering about that. I don't know. You must not have seen the other GIF. Not from Huff. It was from Coach Seth Dagey. It was a Lamar Jackson GIF. So I'm thinking, hey, maybe there's some quarterback news that's about to pop off here. So I'm going to keep my eyes to the timeline here while we're talking in case I see that.
Yeah. So it's a different era and everything, and I think that he's done an admirable job. One of the things, and this will sound like an apologist and an excuse maker, whatever it is, but we have had some extremely untimely injuries that have just devastated our chances of having a better record in Coach's tenure here. We keep talking about what would that 2022 season have looked like with Rasheen Ali and Kalen Laburn both there. Cam Fancher played hurt admirably last year for several games. as did Rasheen. And, you've got like your normal offensive line constantly battling injuries. Those guys are always going through it, man. Just getting. But we've had injuries on defense. We've seen our defensive backfield be decimated and all these things. And it all factors into the game. Yes, that happens at every school across the nation. But it just seems like we have had a bad case of the injury bug to some key positions and or key players that really would have made a difference.
Yeah, well, let's do a microcosm of that real quick. We've talked about seasons like Toby Payne lost for most of the season last year, right?
Yeah.
Would have been a big part of. He's a dynamic downfield threat from a tight end position, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but let's talk about just one game. Let's talk about one game, and let's talk about that game against James Madison last year.
Yeah.
Rasheen Ali does not play, and Marshall fights to a 20-9 loss against one of the class of the conference teams.
And we in the first half, what do you do? It was like 1 yard line, 1 yard line, 3 yard line. What are you supposed to do on the offensive side of the ball without Rasheen Ali?
Correct.
And a going out there hurt as can be Cam Fancher. It's just it is, and we talked about in 2022, one game, just one game difference, and we win the conference championship.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, play for the conference championship. We win the division. It's one of these things where, yeah, you still want the results on the field. No one's happy, including Coach Huff, with a 6-7 season and a bowl loss. No one's going out there and going, man, I hope I just get 500 this year. No one, no coach, no player. And I truly hope that he gets that 9-3, 10-2 season or something like that. And even if it's 8-4, win the conference championship, no matter what it is, I hope we have good success here. I'm a fan. If this ends up being his final season, I'm still going to be a fan of what he's done off the field for this program, what he's meant for some of these things, coming in and navigating these new times that, like, every week you're just like, man, this kid enrolled here in January and he moved on in April.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't have even been talking about that 3 years ago. It's just a different time, NIL changes seemingly the rules, the law, with different court cases. It seems to change 4 or 5 times a year to where you're like, oh, now you can do this, now you can't do this, that sort of thing. It's just crazy times. So I will forever be thankful for what he's done for the program while he's here. And a lot of people are going to say, well, he didn't go 10-2 every year. He didn't go 11-1 every year. He didn't go 9-3 every year. So who cares? But I will be glad that he helped us in this. And even if this is his last year, we've got a lot of good things going on in this program now behind the scenes with the players and the stuff that they do. Alumni players I'm talking about. The stuff that they do and the way that they have done with this program. It's just been night and day.
Well, let's look to wrap this segment up because I know we have to go around the herd. Let me ask you a couple of questions because I know, we have to do this. We have to talk about it, right? Mm-hmm. We have to. And the biggest question is it all or nothing for Marshall this year? Is it conference championship or rebuild? From a coaching standpoint, not from necessarily from a player standpoint. That would accompany a coaching change, but is it all or nothing?
I think it is. I think that it is. I think that there has to be that crazy good season, like I said, or a conference championship, or both. I think if you win a conference championship, it's hard to get rid of a guy.
Sure. Especially in this conference.
Yeah, it's a great conference and a great division of the conference that we're in. I think that's lost on some people, of how much better this football playing is, man. Where any given week, it is hard to point at somebody in the East Division and say, that right there is the best, hands down, football team in this conference because it changes every single week.
Well, I think what it is also is that you can't point to a team and go, that's an absolute win.
Yeah,
There's
you
nobody
can't.
on your schedule. And
Yeah.
what I think more folks are afraid of is that other teams are looking at Marshall and going, that's a win.
Yeah.
Right. That's really where it lies for me as far as the SBC East goes. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you what, people don't care. They don't
I know.
care how good
I
your
know.
division is. You want to win. Honestly, to a certain degree, I don't care how good our division is because we should be able to beat those teams.
Yeah.
It's not like we're in the SEC East, we're in the SBC East. These are peer institutions that are recruiting the same players, that are recruiting, the trying to go after some of the same coaches. Like it's same. And we have to be on the positive side of more of those outcomes than not. And
Yeah.
right now, let's see, Huff is 13-11 in the SBC overall in his through his 3 years right now. So yes, he's above the 500 mark, but I don't think it's enough above the 500 mark for a lot of people. They don't care about the untimely injuries. They don't care about the,
Right.
losing Rasheen for a whole season. They don't care about that. It's about winning. So I'm with you. I love all the positives that Huff has done and the energy that has been breathed back into this program, especially from the Herd Greats. Them coming back around more often in the spring weekend event that had 160 of them around, and all that stuff is great. But at the end of the day, it's about wins and losses. And I love everything that Huff does within the community and all of that stuff. But ultimately, it's not my decision to make, right? It's not your decision to make. But the powers that be that do make those decisions, I think they care about winning. And if you're not going to win in a big way, if you're not going to be in a conference championship every couple of years, then I think you're almost tasked with finding someone that will. So it's the tough reality of the business, but that
It
is
is the business.
Yeah.
It's the business.
Last one I've got for you is what are the one or two biggest challenges you think that is facing the staff in 2024?
Well, I think that implementing this new offense, is huge that they're going to have to do. You bring in an air raid, and you've had so much roster turnover. That I feel like that is a challenge, that you're bringing in all these new players, but even your returning players aren't in the same offensive system that they were in last year. So I just feel like that's the major challenge. Now, that might not be a problem whatsoever, but as a fan, as an onlooker,
Sure looks like one.
as someone that is not in the locker room and out there watching the practices and things like that, on paper, to me, it seems like that is really, really going to be a challenge.
Yeah, we've got some mutual friends that are at other schools where they have run a very pass-heavy offense for a number of years. And when that news first broke and the air raid started getting tossed around with Marshall's name attached to it, he reached out to me and was like, "In one season, like y'all are going to do that in one season? Like, bro, that's not easy, So I get it, and that's from somebody that's been immersed in that style of offense for a number of years. But I'm with you. I think that's the biggest. I think that's the biggest challenge facing this staff too is implementing a brand new offensive scheme.
Well, that goes into my question that I'm going to have for you, and then I'll tell you what I think. Will the air raid be successful in year one, as it needs to be?
It comes down to obviously what you think it's going to come down to. Can you get the quarterback that you have to effectively run an air raid or modified air raid? I don't know if we have that. That's not a knock on any guy that we have, but no guy that we have is an air raid-ish type quarterback. So that's not an unfair statement. A lot of these guys came from more traditional type offensive schemes or an RPO type scheme, and we don't have an air raid type quarterback currently on the roster right now. That's the number one biggest deciding factor, is if it's going to be successful or not. Number two, it's going to be, are you going to be able to put together an offensive line that will allow that offense the ample amount of time or open the blocking holes that you need to effectively run that type of offense? And number three, do you have enough dynamic pass catchers that can make downfield plays, that can get separation, that can make those moves in the middle of the field and get you that 5, 6, 7, 8 yard chunky play to move a chain? Do you have that downfield threat that's going to get you the over the top game breaking play that's going to engage the crowd when you really need that to happen? I don't know. I don't know that it's going to be successful in year one. That's why I think that our friends are like, you're going to do this in a year? Because it seems like it's you get the quarterback, then you go try to find a bunch of wide receivers, then you get your offensive line in place, and it's a multi-year build. I sure as hell hope it's successful in year one. It's going to have to be successful in year one.
Here's why I disagree with that statement of you're going to do this in year one. In 2019, that's a valid question. In 2017, it's an even more valid question.
Right.
Right now, when you're saying, hey, let's go get our quarterback in August, and you can do that because you've got 45 quarterbacks in the portal or whatever it is that's left. There are situations that are drastically different now to where things can be done in 1 year. You're talking about bringing in half of your roster. Last year, I think we had 58 players or something like that total that were new. And you just, you got the majority of the ones that have left here. And again, I'm going to say that again. The majority of the players that left here have gone on to either lower levels or made lateral moves that may not even be as lateral as like peer with us. It's just the same G5 that they've gone to. And we're bringing in players that have had success at P5 institutions. Again, hate these terms. Or were highly recruited out of high school by these institutions. And we're bringing in 6'4", 6'4", 6'3", 5'9" burner on the wide receiving core. It's all going to come down to quarterback and that offensive line play. But I'm bullish. I say that it is successful. I just don't know if I'm ready or not to say if that translates into X amount of wins. But I think the offense itself will be successful in year one.
So ask me this question again in like mid-August. After we've had some summer session practices, the roster is far more concrete, than it is right now. We just talked about Huff tweeting the herd just got bigger. I talked about Daggy putting a GIF out there too, and that leads me to think it might be a quarterback. So ask me this question in a couple of weeks, in a month or two, and see if my answer is the same. But I think that this offense might be. My gut reaction right now is that it's serviceable in year one. I don't know that it's going to be a program changing thing in year one.
Yeah. Well, that's it for me. Everything kind of revolves for me around that the unknown right now, and a little bit of that is roster, but most of it is the new players that we brought in. Will they be able to seamlessly get into this new offense in time to make a big difference?
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty tough. Next week's position group breakdown series, the series will continue, and we'll talk about special teams. So we'll get into what Coach Gallant's got coming in and is still on the roster and all the movement that goes along with special teams. But Russ, let's quickly right now take it around the herd.
Going to start with football. Mitch Griffiths retires. We'll talk about that very briefly. You and I are pretty much on the same page. The guy didn't practice here. He might have been here doing paperwork and some lifting or something like that, but he decided to retire. He's not on the roster. He never played here. It was one of these things, and this is no knock to him, but some people just immediately assumed he was going to be the starter. He didn't go up against the other coach or the quarterbacks that were here. So he's not on the roster. Now we just look at internal or external that we bring in another quarterback for having enough options.
Yeah, so he committed to the herd in December and had to finish up his studies at Wake Forest. That's why he was not here in the spring. And I'm with you, man. This is hard to get mad at because the guy was never here competing. He never went through spring ball. He wasn't, doing all that kind of stuff. He just made the decision to step away from football. Doesn't appear like it's an injury related thing. It's just personal choice, which is what I am the most glad about, that it's not a physical thing that making him hang him up. He's just choosing to do that. Maybe enter the next chapter in his life, the professional level. And you're right. So now Marshall is currently left with 4 quarterbacks on the roster, and we'll talk about them much later when we do the breakdown. But for these purposes, you've got the Tulsa transfer, Braylon Braxton, of course, Cole Pennington, Colin Parachek, who was in the portal and back out of the portal, and then freshman quarterback Ja'Kai Long from Hurricane. So some intriguing prospects there. But we'll get into that when we talk about quarterbacks later. And who knows if another one will be added. But you're right. Mitch Griffiths, I wish him the best of luck for the remainder of his life. But to me, I just don't get it. That everybody was like hanging their hat on, oh, this is the answer. And then when he decided to retire, they're like, oh, well, we're screwed.
Yeah.
Come on. Like,
we weren't bringing in 1997 Peyton Manning. Okay. We were bringing in a guy that played at Wake Forest. And when you look at the stats, they don't leap out at you to say, this is your answer here. We've talked all the time about bringing in players, and you don't really say, well, his stats here are exactly what he's going to have here. We just talked about that in softball. Mm-hmm. But I am also not the person that immediately leaps to say, this is the guy, because to me, it's like, you're going to have to prove it.
You got to prove it. That's right. Yeah. You got to prove it.
But I will say, which I told you when we weren't recording, I'm as guilty as anybody. And I'll give you an example. Hunter Green signs with the Cincinnati Reds in 2017, and I start looking for places to dust off for the new trophies that we can put up for the Cincinnati Reds. So it's easy to get involved in the hype, but I do think that a big problem, not just with Marshall fans, it's all across college sports, is immediately hyping someone just because it is a body. Not that it is 97 Peyton Manning. Mm-hmm. It's, you start looking at someone that was just, a backup quarterback at another team just because they were from P5 doesn't automatically mean that they're going to come in here and do what Chad did in the late 90s.
Right.
So,
yeah, we're moving on. I'm not going to drag the guy, right? Because I'm just not going to do that, obviously. But he did never play here, so what are you getting mad about?
Yeah,
and call me old school, Russ. Call me old school. I'm still make a guy prove it. Best guy wins the job type guy. I'm not handing anybody anything, especially when it comes to the quarterback of my football team. You've got to be the best guy in the room and earn that number 1 spot. So we'll see what the staff does from here on.
And I'm not dragging him either, but it would be easy to see where the hype would be if it was someone that came in with like 35 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions, 4,000 yards. Then I could see why someone is getting hyped. But, it's a moot point now.
Yes.
Men's basketball. We have a new transfer, and it just happens to be Kai Spears from Alabama.
Yeah, looks like Kai's going to be taking one of the walk-on spots right now. Of course, I think you can draw the line of who that is. That's a pretty well-known last name here at Marshall University as it relates to athletics, but kind of fell under the radar there, and then the photo kind of came out on Instagram yesterday. So, welcome to the herd.
I have no news on this, but I'm not so sure it's a walk-on spot. And here's why. One, we have scholarships to give.
Okay.
And there was also word came out over this past week that Kyle Braun may be doing exactly what Mitch Griffiths is doing, is not transferring somewhere else, just saying, I'm kind of done with it. I'm going to focus on academics and not athletics. I don't know. I don't have anybody that has officially said that. There's just word going around that has been stated. So that would, one, open up another scholarship, but we already had a scholarship to give anyway. Back in February, Kai earned a scholarship, was given from Alabama to where they took him from walk-on to scholarship. And if you're a scholarship at Alabama in the SEC, I can't imagine, that you
He may be. He may be.
Yeah.
I just assumed that it would be a walk-on spot. I don't know how many scholarships we have available. I have no clue, man. So I just assumed we were full. I just
But
assumed.
by my count, we still have some work that we can do in the portal.
Okay. Good. Good.
All right. So women's basketball, we also picked up Maddie Kellyone. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And she transferred in from Tennessee Tech and was with Jolie Folks for that national championship very recently.
Yep, a couple of years ago, she was with Coach Fulks at Transylvania when they went on the Natty run. She led the team in scoring there, just over 15 points a game, like 15.3 or 0.4. I think it was also around 4.5 assists per game. So getting a scoring guard looks like something that we've been talking about. Are we going to see that soon? I think we might see that soon. And I didn't see anything on Maddie committing to the Herd until the women's basketball account tweeted that she was signed. So cool. Kind of kept that one under the radar until the ink was dry on the paper. But the roster continues to come together. I still don't think they're done. I don't think they're done at all. I think we're going to probably see another scoring guard. Just feels like that. We've got shooters already. They've been working the rebounding angle and the big bodies down low, the tall bodies down low. Now we're working up here at the perimeter and seeing if we can find some scoring guards. I like it. I think we're going to see one more.
Yeah, it seems like we might need a wing, like a guard that could also be a small forward. That's just from the outside looking at it. Women's soccer picks up a couple, Carolina Falco and Maria Chavez, both from Portugal. Keeping that international flair. Coach Samos is very much in that grassy mold of bringing in great international talent. And we'll see how this totally new roster looks very soon. August is the first game.
Cool.
Track and field, we picked up Christian Childs. It looks like a track performer, not in the field events, and he comes from Columbia, Maryland. As we always say, we're not going to have very much info on these things, but the person that has decided to write for us, we hope to have a lot more info on track and field coming up on ThunderCast.online. Always love to throw that plug in there. So look for some more info coming soon.
Cool.
And finish it up with softball. We saw Bailey Walters enter the transfer portal. She was a freshman, true freshman, played in one game, I think it was last year, and we'll be moving on. Just want to say Allie Harrell, Allison Rager are both out on the recruiting trail right now, and you can also see just about all of our coaches playing professionally this offseason, and you can catch their games on ESPN Plus quite often.
Yep, AU Pro Softball has already started. The other day, I think the game started a couple of days ago. One last note about softball: Paige Maynard officially signed, so that's just not a commitment anymore. She is now signed with the Herd. So cool. Listen, I got to talk about this before we leave really fast. This is freaking hilarious to me, and it's the hardest of hard no's of all time. I was sitting there just refreshing my timeline, seeing if I could see who the commitment was, right, for Herd football. Come across this tweet from Brett McMurphy. And now, yes, I checked. It's the actual Brett McMurphy with his 303,000 followers, okay? And get this. I want to read this to you and have your honest reaction.
Okay.
The Big 12 is in discussions with Allstate on a naming rights deal to change the league's name, sources told Action Network HQ. The deal could be worth between $30 to $50 million annually, and name possibilities include the Big All-State Conference or the All-State 12 Conference, sources said.
I mean, money is money, but branding matters. And the one thing that if I'm a member school, I say, because I have voting rights, right?
Yeah,
and if I'm a member school, I say, what in the hell is in it for me? If there's 12 of us, 16 of us, whatever, are we splitting $50 million a piece that we get, or is that going to the administration and all that?
Right,
yeah. But I don't know money's money, but I don't know if there's enough money out there I mean,
You don't want to be the big Allstate?
no, the only thing that I could do, and even though this is my professional competitor, but equipment rental, there is Sunbelt Rentals,
which is cool.
So if they called it the Sunbelt Conference, sponsored by the Sunbelt, or however they wanted to do that,
that makes sense.
I'd take their money, because that's not really changing anything.
That makes sense.
You know, I don't want to be the Wendy's American athlete.
You don't want to be the big Wendy, man. Come on.
Oh man,
absurd. We're getting a little too greedy when we're talking about stuff like this.
I mean, I was on the natural fence. Progression.
I was on the fence when they were talking about allowing corporate logos at midfield, and you know, I'm like, all right, come on, man, like seriously. But the big All-State Conference, hard no. Anyway, that's all I got. Take us out of here.
Whether you see us at the Jack, whether you see us at the Joan, whether you see us at the Dot, no matter where you see us, hopefully it won't be with the All-State big All-State insurance policy conference. No matter where you see us, we're going to be saying, go Herd.
Go Herd. It's the ThunderCast. Tune in next week. Position group breakdowns continue with the special teams. We'll see you next week. Later.